Tracy.
I'm your other host, Rahana Power.
And today we have George Reese. Welcome.
Hi.
Hey.
Thanks.
Today, I guess we have a few questions for you, George, that we normally start with. Rahana, if you will. My
a few being one. Okay.
I'm just kidding.
So, George, tell me. What is a fun, random talent that you have that others may or may not know about you?
Well, I suppose I don't know whether may not know about me or not, but probably know about half of this, depending on how you know me, is that I'm somebody who switches between right brain and left brain pretty easily. So, I end up doing things that involve both technology and not DIT type technology like programming and stuff, and then turn around and do filmmaking. And, I started out my career actually programming and then writing books about the stuff I had done.
Cool.
before I was a writer from a filmmaking side, I was a writer from a technical writing perspective.
Oh, wow.
That's awesome. That's really cool. What made you transition from writing in one format to writing in another?
Well, so I've always been a writer of some sort or another. I mean, going back to being a kid, I actually wrote books for my grandmother on stuff I'd learned, and then, I think my writing skills got me into the college that I got into because my grades were sort of all over the place. But I wrote some really awesome essays, and,
nice.
I was a philosophy major, so that's all writing. And then, that just, so then I went in to Hollywood for a while, then went into technology for a while, and then back into filmmaking. And, common theme has been no matter where I am, I'm writing constantly.
Nice.
Wow. Nice.
So you've written, what kind of technical books would these be, or instructional, or?
Well, so if you're a technology person, you'd be familiar with O'Reilly books, generally the animal books that are very famous in the technology community. So I've written a number of those on Java, on MySQL, on databases in general, REST programming, Python. So
I would read Python, yeah. I see these memes on I follow a Python coding Instagram thing, and they have this whole thing of it was HTML5 and Python, but they show the big wave crashing over on HTML5 or something.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like that. I don't know, just those memes you see on.
Yep.
Because apparently a lot of people, I saw the timeline of how, I think it was Windows or something that was, or C++ or something that was the dominant language for a long time, and then Python slowly took over.
Yeah, it was C++, then it was Java, and then lately Python's been taking over, which is actually kind of funny because Python's a rather old language.
Wow.
But the problems that crop up these days are very well suited towards Python, which, when Python came along, Perl was very dominant in those areas, which I'm sure your audience is fascinated with.
I know,
that,
right?
I don't know what Perl any script. Of that means.
Well, when you watch The Social Network, he talks about there was a scene where he's writing something that's oh, that's Perl script, and it's like what? What is that? But people who know would be able to tell on a screen what's being typed out, probably who know the language. So,
yeah.
Yeah. Anyways.
So the reason that we're all here today, tell us what do you do in the world of filmmaking?
Well, I wear a lot of hats, actually. I'm an entrepreneur, so I've been doing startups, since I left Hollywood at the end of, in the mid or early 90s. And my latest startup is a streaming platform for short form narrative, or no, not necessarily narrative, short form episodic content, colloquially a web series. So I'm busy trying to get that company going and getting filmmakers to put their content on our platform and getting viewers to try to watch it. And then, not try. I mean, it's easy to watch. You want them to keep watching.
Right.
But then, the other hat is that I do short films and web series myself. And, over the last year and a half, I've been working on a web series called Utopia Planitia. That's a sci-fi web series and has taken a lot of work, and it's finally down the stretch of post-production right now. And then the other hat I wear is that I run the Minnesota Webfest, which is a film festival dedicated to the web series that's here in Minnesota the last weekend of every September.
Wow.
So I think some people might be surprised that there's enough web series happening here in Minnesota to really flourish that. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, so I guess that's an interesting tie to the other stuff. So, my current startup's called Sika TV. And before that, I had a startup called Instratus. It was a cloud computing startup. And one of the things that happened with Instratus is that, we built this cloud computing company, between the years of 2008 and 2013 in Minnesota with offices in Auckland, New Zealand, and Edinburgh, Scotland.
Wow.
One of the people side of things was based on the idea that it's easier to build a tech company not in Silicon Valley than it is to build one in Silicon Valley, and in particular in Minnesota, because there's a lot of good technology talent, partly thanks to the University of Minnesota. But so then I sold that to Dell and everything, and so when I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do next, the other area in which I think Minnesota excels that the rest of the world doesn't know about is in the creative community. In particular, I was aware of that because before I did Instratus, I was with an ad agency called it was a startup called Imaginet that was acquired by J. Walter Thompson and went through several name changes, RMG Connect. I don't even know all the different names it went through, but the thing I learned working locally in the ad industry is that there's a lot of talented, creative people, both on just the design side of the industry and in the commercial production side of things. And then as I got more back into doing film stuff, I realized that, because of the theater community as well. So you got a lot of people here who are making money full time doing creative stuff that aren't in the same sort of boat that people are in on the coasts. And they actually care about it, I think, more than people on the coast. So I figured, doing something along those lines here in Minnesota made a lot of sense, and it turns out that that's been the case. Now, when I first got involved, to get to your question very indirectly, is that there wasn't a lot going on in the web series community, but there's a lot going on, creatively, in particular in short films and feature films. And then you had, people like Matt Anderson, who had been doing theater people now for, at this point it was 3 seasons. Now they've got 4 under their belt and they're raising money for a 5th. People were starting to discover the web series. And I think in the last 3 years since I've been doing the Minnesota Webfest, there's been a changeover in terms of preference of new filmmakers wanting to be doing web series instead of short films.
Yeah, I think there's more chances for people to get involved with that, especially if, as a filmmaker, maybe you get a chance to work with more people than maybe you would traditionally with a film. Yeah, and I also think that, as a writer, it is one of the best ways to explore characters. Short film, you write the characters, you write the story, it better be compact and tight or you fail.
that, while it's nice and satisfying on a project basis, as a creative, to me, it feels like you're leaving a lot left unsaid, and the web series sort of lets you do that in a way that you can't do with short or feature films.
Right. Yeah, because I feel like as a filmmaker, I make short films, but then their stories are too big for short films. Like it splatters beyond the template. Yeah.
And even with the feature film, it doesn't have to be tight like a short film, but the story has to end, and the characters have to come to a resolution of their character arc. There's no mystery in where the characters are going to go. They need to follow the arc you design, whereas in anything episodic, whether it's, short form web series or whether it's, hour-long dramas, over the course of the series, characters actually have a chance to surprise you.
Have you seen much growth over the last, I guess you said 3 years now?
Yep.
Have you seen growth in that now?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
The first year, we couldn't even program a Minnesota block. Now, part of it was that in the first year, I did exclude any series in which, I had any relationship, because I wanted to create a bit of an arm's length in the first year so nobody was questioning what we were doing here. I didn't want it to be a showcase for things George had done or something like that. And so that meant Transylvania Television couldn't be involved and Bleed couldn't be involved. But even still, the point of the matter is at that point there just wasn't a lot that I wasn't directly involved in, and then come in year two, not only did we have a Made in Minnesota block, but some really good stuff from a variety of corners of Minnesota, and that continued on into this year.
That's awesome.
That's really cool. Tell us a little bit more about your current web series.
So Utopia Planitia is a sci-fi web series, and it is it's a combination of two objectives. One is that I started writing and fell in love with the story, but the other thing is as I'm writing it, I'm thinking, well, one thing that we're not doing a lot of in the web series world is seeing, epic storylines getting told, Game of Thrones type stuff. And part of it is maybe it's impossible to do because, it's hard to tell an epic storyline in 5 to 10 minute chunks. And so part of what I'm trying to do is say, okay, can it be done? Can you do all this world building in an art form that hates exposition? I always say when I'm giving talks on web series that exposition kills a web series. So how do you world build without doing any of that? So that's what. So but the more mundane part of it is it takes place on Mars 100 years from now. About 50 years into our future, Earth falls due to climate catastrophe, leaving a colony on Mars to themselves, and we start the series with a murder, and it's really just a murder mystery in a sci-fi environment.
That sounds really cool.
Yeah.
I like that.
I think we're having fun with it so far.
Yeah, good. Because we've had a few guests on our show that are, I believe, a part of the project, like Alora, Riley, Kendra, Alora.
Yep.
Was Cynthia in that?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
We have a lot of people. It's an ensemble cast type thing. So yeah, a lot of people who are very busy in this community have been part of it.
Yeah. And I've worked with Elizabeth Eflin too.
Yep.
She's great. But I guess, how did this idea come about for you? What inspired you to go with this?
So it originally started out as me trying to just write around. It's actually something very silly. I just decided to start a story around one a dramatic element, a poisoned cup, and nobody knows who's going to drink it. And so I sort of started building characters around that, and then built the story for the first episode around that, and then built a world around that. So that's sort of how it came to be.
Interesting.
Cool.
I did not set out to write a sci-fi series.
Well, you're in it now.
Yeah.
But that's fascinating. So you started with kind of like a mystery thing. Did you go to a dinner theater at all? I'm just kidding.
No. Yeah. I never fancy myself a mystery writer. That's so.
But it's a fun element.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, that does get you intrigued a little, because you want to know.
Yeah, it was almost like I was doing improv as a writer.
So if this is your first like murder mystery type genre, what do you normally gravitate to genre-wise when you're writing or creating?
Some form of drama, and of course this fits into that. I like exploring philosophical questions without getting too heavy from the viewer's perspective, I think. On occasion that forces me to put it in the sci-fi realm. So when I do sci-fi, it isn't I'm doing Star Trek type sci-fi where, there are, people shooting lasers and aliens and that sort of stuff. It's more along the lines of something that I have to take out of the present because putting it in the present will come with a lot of baggage.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Is there something that you have not tried to tackle before? So like this is your first murder mystery type genre. Like is there another that you haven't quite reached out to that you want to?
That I want to in the future?
Yeah.
I definitely want to do a horror. I've always been one of those people that so I've had this belief that it's hard to write good sci-fi books. I'm not that big of a sci-fi reader, but sci-fi works really well on screen. But the opposite's true of horror. That I love horror books, but rarely does horror work on screen. And so I've been sort of wanting to tackle that particular thing. I mean, I have some favorite horrors, but there are very few of them, and and I'm very picky about what I consider really good horror.
Oh, what do you like?
What are your favorites?
Well, I mean, The Shining would be by far my favorite. I really
the Kubrick Shining.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, the real Shining, not the stuff that Stephen King blesses.
Yeah. Right. Oh, wait.
Which
what?
funny thing is, I love the book The Shining too.
Okay. Yeah.
I just think it's one of those instances where just because the author has one vision doesn't mean that his vision is right when you put it on screen.
Right.
I didn't know there was more than one.
Well, it's a long story.
So the new movie that's like the second part of the show, is that from the good one or the
I've
bad
read the
one?
book. I haven't seen the movie yet.
It's
the
a
book
slant
it's coming
back
soon.
towards the Stephen King side of things from the movie, because Stephen King didn't really like the movie at all. He wanted his name off of it.
Oh, I did not know that.
That's why it's called Stanley Kubrick's The Shining.
Got it.
But now this is, like, apparently I heard that it was like a Dr. Sleep was created to move it away from the movie and bring it back into Stephen King's world.
But the movie for Dr. Sleep is supposed to bridge the two worlds.
Right.
Yes. So Stephen King did want to do that with the book Dr. Sleep, and it's a very good book. I loved reading it.
Okay.
And the movie, they wanted to pay homage to Stanley Kubrick's to such a degree that they really replicated down to the patterns of the carpet and the Overlook Hotel.
Wow.
I just watched that the other night. It was just like, wow.
Yeah, it's a great
It's
one.
still good.
Yeah.
It's still good, right.
Wow. Okay, so anyway, continue. Some other favorites of yours.
Well, I said 1408, The Ring. I tend to like, to me, the best horror is one, the larger the body count, the worse the horror movie is to me, It shouldn't be where everybody's just getting killed. It should be where there is palpable fear and terror, and that terror is overcome in some way, shape, or form.
What did you think of? I've only seen like 3 scary movies, so that's why I'm very interested. And so I'm just going to go off of those. Have you seen, and what did you think of A Quiet Place?
I haven't seen that one.
Okay, because that makes me think of that. Like it's focused on very few people. It's not like everybody's just dying and going missing. So like it's to me like it is emotionally terrifying. Like you're just afraid the whole time.
Well, then I need to watch it.
Yeah, I feel like you enjoy it.
Have you seen E.T.?
E.T. Yes.
Yeah, good. See?
I'm literally doing that tonight. Okay,
Good.
It's Halloween.
Good.
And I'm going to go home and watch.
George, you walked into something here that's
This is a year and a half long conversation.
been 9 months in the making.
E.T. scares me.
Yeah.
Oh,
You're dressed for the
it's a
part.
great Halloween movie. Then.
Yes.
Yes.
Like I know that it's not technically a scary movie. It's not a Halloween movie, but his face scares me, and I will have nightmares. So it's going to fit the day. Okay. Anyway, moving on.
So as far as like your past film projects, what are some works that you're really proud of that you have made thus far?
Well, in any particular capacity, or
yeah, any
okay.
as a writer,
I mean,
as a director, whatever. Yeah.
I think. Okay, so I'll just pick one because it's a really oddball one. So there's this really short that I did called Polo. That's it's like 90 seconds long, and it screened at the first mini festival.
Cool.
Yeah, Amber did here. Was it 4 years ago or something like that? And it was one of those things where I decided I wanted to do something that made me take all of the roles that I think I suck at in a on set. So I was going to take on the cinematography, the lighting, the set design, and I wrote a script that literally was one word for 90 seconds. Somebody saying polo, polo, polo.
Oh my!
And so. It turned out, I think, pretty decent. I think it's one of the more enjoyable things I've done. It was. And there are two things I like about it. One is that it did force me to push, the boundaries of what I feel safe in as a filmmaker, and the other is that I actually had my youngest daughter act in it. Because the prior film that I did had a role for, she was 10 at the time, a 10-year-old girl, and I wouldn't cast her in that role, and she kept saying why, and I'm like, because the other actors are professional actors and they wouldn't be too happy with Dad bringing in his daughter, in one of the lead roles, and so she did not understand that, and then that film required extras, and so I let her be an extra, and I subsequently cut her.
Does she know that?
Yeah, she knows that, and she was very unhappy with me for that. So with this film, where I was just experimenting and not, I didn't have professional people depending on me and stuff like that, I had her act in it, and the funniest thing about that is that many after it screened, I took her to the premiere, and afterwards somebody came up to her and said, "Oh, you were so creepy," and she started getting upset, and we both had to say, no, that's good. That's what we were going for.
You did a good job.
Yes.
Oh, that's really sweet. I love that.
That's a good one. Well, transitioning into like your business now, I guess before we get into Sika TV, like you've had several ventures, as you mentioned.
Yeah.
What got you started in that? Like, is that part of your upbringing at all, or like what?
I keep getting this question on, podcasts and panels and stuff.
Oh.
And I still, and I think I'm surprised by the question. Why did I end up being an entrepreneur? I just think it's one of those things where, it's a creative outlet for me, more than anything else. And, a creative outlet that pays the bills sort of thing, think up an idea and then control my own destiny doing it. The first several startups I did were somebody else's startups, and then the last 3 have been, mine. The one is still running, they started in 2003, is still going. It makes money, but not enough to pay me anything, but it pays the employees at least. Then there's the Instratus one that sold to Dell, and now there's Sika TV. And I just think I have to keep doing it.
Right.
Wow.
Does that tie in with your filmmaking too? Were you always a filmmaker, or were you an entrepreneur first, or both?
So I came out of college with a philosophy degree in 1991, which was the middle of the first Bush recession, they weren't hiring philosophers anywhere, oddly enough. And so I, went back home to, at that time, was San Diego. In college, I ran the radio station and started up a television station and produced a couple of TV shows.
That's so cool.
Directed a couple of them. So when thanks. When I got out of college, it seemed like, okay, I'm not going to be a philosopher. That seems, and I didn't want to go into radio because, college radio and commercial radio are wildly different beasts. There's nothing creative or interesting about commercial radio at all. So that wasn't going to happen. So I, being in Southern California, decided to, go try my hand. I wanted to go into filmmaking, ended up in television and, doing the typical, crew type stuff that you do, PA, grip, audience page, gopher of some sort or another, right. And really hated that community there in LA.
How long did you work in LA, like doing all that kind of stuff?
For about a year and a half, yeah. And basically until the LA riots came along, and then and the LA riots were kind of a mess, and so I just left 2 weeks later and went back to Maine, which is where my school that I graduated from is.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And then from there you picked Minnesota?
Well, so I was in Maine, and in Maine I was doing distance education, so I was broadcasting classes to, acting as a master control operator, broadcasting classes across the state of Maine, because Maine's a hugely rural state and spread out all over everywhere. So the best way to educate people was to actually, have them watch classes on their TVs. And so we did that. And it was one of the pioneer, which, now everybody's doing online education, but then it was, unheard of to be doing your classes on the computer or television. And that ended up having a technology component, and that was the mid-90s, and so that's when the internet took off. And so I switched over to doing some technology stuff, and then somebody in Minnesota wanted to hire a programmer, and,
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So that's how I ended up getting distracted into technology.
And that's what brought you to Minnesota, ultimately?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Were you raised in Maine or elsewhere? Or?
No, I was raised in Houston.
Oh, Houston.
Yeah.
My goodness.
Wow. So Houston, San Diego, Maine.
Yep.
Well, LA.
And then Minnesota.
Maine, yeah.
Houston, San Diego, Maine, Massachusetts, San Diego, Los Angeles, Maine, Minnesota.
Okay.
So at least you had like some really core experiences like across the states.
Oh, yeah.
It's not like you grew up in Illinois and then just came here and then that's it. Like you've experienced all of these other places and a variety of things not only throughout like film and that type of community. So that's phenomenal.
Yeah, it's been really cool experience for me.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's something I actually am pretty proud of. So.
Absolutely. And I can imagine that would even just like psychologically make you feel more comfortable being in this industry at this point, knowing I've done all of these other things and this is really what I want to do.
Yeah. It's one thing I also think it's helped with, as I mentioned within Stratus, we did it where, we were a global company, even though we were 20-ish people, my philosophy is somebody who does hiring is, you find the best people wherever they may be and you build the company around that. You do not mold the company to, you don't force people to be there 9 to 5 and in the office in Minnesota, because then, only Silicon Valley has the delusion that they've got the best talent in the world. Nobody has a monopoly on the best talent. And so when it's come to like the web series world, it's made it really easy for me to establish relationships globally. And I think that's one thing that's helped Minnesota Webfest and Minnesota filmmakers who are in the web series market get exposure, is just that, I've got these global relationships with filmmakers all over the world and festivals all over the world. And, at the Minnesota Webfest, one of the things that Minnesota filmmakers compete for is direct selection to these other festivals. So we have from Minnesota 4 or 5 web series in the top ranked top 50 web series across the world. That is more than anybody except for California and New York.
Wow.
So,
that's incredible.
That is good.
Yeah. How many other festivals have you been able to submit your web series for? So far I've only competed as a pilot because I'm not.
You don't have $10 million for one episode.
What?
Game of Thrones.
Yeah. So we completed the pilot at the beginning of in time for Z-Fest, at the beginning of 2019, and we're still in post on the other episodes on season 1, and we just got an award to do 2 more episodes for season 1 in the Bilbao Series Land Festival. But but for the pilot, which we've been entering this year, I think we've been in at least a dozen festivals across the world.
Wow.
That's so much fun.
Yeah,
that's really
been
cool.
A blast. Yeah.
So far, right?
Yeah, so far.
Because it's kind of early in the festival season.
Well, it's the end of the so the web series festivals go on a calendar year basis.
Oh, okay. I'm thinking film. So
yeah.
Okay.
So so the end of the year really is November. There isn't anything going on in December, and then it all starts up around late February, early March again.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So, with Utopia Planitia, what you did some traveling recently. Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, it was to Spain.
Yeah.
For Bilbao Series Land.
So cool.
So it is. So I met the directors of Bilbao Series Land, I don't know, maybe 4 years ago in Miami Webfest, which was one of the first web series festivals I went to as Seika TV, because, we were trying to establish relationships with different people in this growing community. And so I met them, decided to go out the following year to Bilbao, and just had a great time. One of the things that's great about all the different web festivals, they all are different in some way that has a very local flavor to them, and the community is much different. It's much different than going to a film festival.
I bet.
Everybody's very supportive. They become your biggest cheerleaders and all of that, and it's a real community. And I don't feel I get that from a global film community at all. When I go to film festivals, I don't really take home a lot of relationships that I end up cherishing months later, much less years later. So So at any rate, this year, I was back again. This would have been my third year. For personal reasons, had to cancel at the last minute last year, but it was great. And like I said, one of the things that Utopia Planitia won is we were in the pitching contest. They don't have a pilots competition, so I took part in the pitching contest, and we won enough co-production to do 2 more episodes of Utopia Planitia that we're going to shoot out there in the Basque Country.
Oh, cool.
Towards the end of this year.
Mm-hmm.
Where?
The Basque Country. That's northern Spain. It's sort of a distinct region region of Spain.
Okay.
That is.
You want a co-production, so are you going to go through Canada with that, or what? Like how?
No. It's going to be my production company working with a production company there in Bilbao.
Okay.
And so they're essentially funding it and providing
so like
all the resources.
Type of thing. Okay.
And taking my script and I'll direct it. I'll probably bring my cinematographer out there for continuity purposes. So he'll probably be the DP, but otherwise. It's going to be all Basque cast and crew.
Ooh. Wow.
And it's going to be in the Basque language, too, for the most part.
Okay.
We're going to shoot one scene here in Minnesota. It's a flashback episode. That's how we can do this.
Okay.
Right. I was going to say, we have a lot of Minnesotans in this film. You getting them all out there,
This is actually, Noah Gillette hasn't been in any of the episodes yet, but he has a character that is supposed to show up in season 2, and his bar that he owns actually appears in season 1, and so I wrote up his backstory that takes place on Earth. He's a refugee, and how the heck did he get from Earth to Mars? And so this is his backstory. So his backstory is he was born on Earth in the Basque Country after the climate catastrophe, and tried to escape Earth on a rogue spaceship, and basically 23 people left Earth, only 7 survived the trip, and he was one of them as a little boy.
Okay, I have a writer question then now.
Yep.
You just got me going here. It's just like, okay, what do you find like the most challenging for you? Is it world building? Is it relationship? Is it character? Is it story? Like what is for you?
For me, that's a good question.
Or where do you start even? I mean,
I think it is character differentiation. That's really sort of an early phase thing in writing, is that when I go through and do my first draft of anything that I'm writing, I'm focused a little bit on the plots and how I'm going to get from here to there, and I probably have 1 or 2 characters who I have strong opinions about how they're going to be, and they're the ones who sort of help guide where things go. But sometimes a lot of the secondary characters, it's hard to see, and so that's the thing, is making sure that they have a purpose as to why they're there and not just set decoration. And so that's the challenge as you go from a first draft to a final draft for me, is making sure all the characters have very distinct voices, a purpose for being in the scene, and stuff like that.
Right. So
in a something like this with a big cast, there's a huge risk of having them sound alike, so that you really have to pay attention.
Right. Well, I guess it makes sense if they're kind of like depending. Like I saw the one at Z-Fest, so it was kind of like almost like there's a certain class to some of these characters. Yep. And then it was like, which one does this belong to? It's kind of like, and it is very interesting in that way.
Class plays a huge role in this entire series.
Right.
One of the core themes is privilege versus lack of privilege. And that's why I had to do it as a sci-fi thing, because if I put it in, 2019, then it would come with a heck of a lot of baggage. And in this world on Mars, the difference between privilege and lack of privilege isn't gender, color of skin, or religion or even economic class. It's when you arrived on Mars, and the difference being a matter of 10 years. And in the refugee class in this world, you have sort of the perfect disposable population, because these refugees have no value as labor, and they cannot reproduce. So they will go away eventually. So they literally can be ignored until they go away.
Even more interesting. It's like
yeah.
So when is this coming out, George?
Right?
Hopefully, if I get everything done, mid-January is the target for the and of course on Sika TV. Yep.
Okay.
How many episodes are in a season?
So the beauty of a web series is it's however you need to tell a story arc.
Right.
And the challenge that, or the thing that I've done to solve this problem of a big epic is make sure that each episode has its sort of own core story arc that is almost like a short film, but not quite. And you can see in the Z-Fest episode that it felt a little incomplete, I'm sure. So it felt like it wasn't quite with the rest of the stuff at Z-Fest, but at the same time, it was, if you put it in a lineup of other episodes, it feels complete.
Right,
in a
to
different
be
way.
continued type of episode.
Right, so then the season itself so the episodes tie together and start to create a sort of 3-act structure for the season, and then of course the seasons then get put together to tell the big story, so the beauty of the web series format is that it's however much it takes to tell the story. In my case, I originally wrote 10 episodes, and then when I tried to budget it out, it was too much, so I rewrote it as 5 episodes, and then sort of a 6th and 7th, which is really one episode that's a 2-parter.
Nice.
Okay. Is that including these 2 now that you get to go
7
in?
total, yes.
Got it.
So tell us about also Sika TV now. First off, kind of an unusual name. How did you come up with that?
We just worked with an agency to come up with the name, it was me and a guy I started in Stratus with, David Bagley, and then my boss at Dell started Sika TV, and all of us are just sick of these branding exercises, so we decided to delegate it.
I love it.
Yeah.
How long did that take?
Oh, it was a quick process.
Okay.
I mean, the branding stuff.
Yeah.
Delegating it to somebody else makes it really quick and easy. That's the problem. When you get a bunch of people in to do an official branding, thing, that'll end up taking months, and nobody's ever going to agree. And so it's just sort of can we live with this? Yeah. And
when was it established?
So we started in January 2016.
Okay.
And then we went live, started streaming on March of 2017. So about a year and a quarter later.
Okay.
Wow. Nice.
When it comes to net neutrality, what are your thoughts on that?
That's a good question. I wasn't expecting that one. No, but it's I'm a firm believer in net neutrality, and Sika TV is a good example of why you need net neutrality. If I am sure people like Verizon and AT&T and all their friends would rather a world not crop up in which Sika TVs exist, in which there are people like Netflix who they can extort and say, pay us the gatekeeper fee, and but we can't survive if we were suddenly forced. I mean, first off, if you're streaming something from Sika TV, you're already paying for that bandwidth, and I'm already paying for that bandwidth. I pay on my end, you pay on your end. There's no reason I should be paying an extra tax on top of that to make sure that I have priority access for whatever reason to
right.
to you.
Now that it's gone,
Well, so far it hasn't impacted yet because I think they're going very slowly into what type of world they're trying to, because they don't want to make all of the things that we're afraid of happen all at once.
It's coming. I can feel it.
Yes, I can feel it too.
Yeah.
But as far as streaming services, startup streaming services go, haven't felt the impact of that yet.
Okay. Granted, you're not Netflix or anything. They already get
Yeah.
what used to be basically TV, but in through the line,
Yep.
So.
Well, and with our technology, it would be a little bit complicated for them to determine how to tax us anyways, because we're staged in the Amazon cloud, we're streamed through Bright Cove, so there is no us. We don't own servers that they can go and tax, and for the most part we don't even look like a streaming service to the internet providers.
Right. And wireless is currently I haven't seen any problems through wireless. That's actually a kind of a okay thing right now.
Yeah.
But things like Amazon, where they already own the infrastructure, but what they do is they mimic that and create it themselves if it's successful. So
Yep.
That's the
Yeah, I don't, obviously I love Amazon's technology, but I would never trust them with any of my secrets.
They already have them, sorry.
Yeah.
But anyways, when you said you were going around to festivals finding, I guess making relationships and then figuring out what else is out there for content.
Yep.
How did you go about selecting content maybe?
I focus very much on stories. People, especially people who have done a good job of building good characters. I mean, especially in the early days when, it's been 2016 is when I started recruiting people, and it's 2019. But a lot has changed in those 3.5 years, and in particular, the quality of web series has just gone up dramatically. So it used to be, when I was recruiting those first 50 shows that we launched with in 2017, I had to forgive certain technical mistakes, and some of them even, on the unforgivable side, like sound issues, because they had really good stories. Now we're in a position where we don't make those kinds of concessions anymore. You need to have your sound. I mean, you don't have to have a technically perfect thing. Nobody has a technically perfect thing. I mean, sometimes you get a Starbucks cup in a fantasy scene, Yeah. But at the end of the day, what I tell people is that the web series is a showrunner's medium, not a cinematographer's medium. So focus on good storytelling and people will watch it. If you have, if you're a technical wonder but you have no story, this isn't DC.
I just lost my question. I'm so unhappy with myself right now. You go and then I will remember my question.
Well, I think that because of your kind of large experience from being all over, from Houston to California, do you find that things, I don't know, now that you have some time behind you with Sika TV, with the data maybe, do you see that it's reaching certain people or at all, or is it getting attention
Yeah,
outside
so
of
there's
Minnesota?
some really weird stuff I've learned. Probably the most interesting is that, the old broadcast television calendar of, launch in September, shut down in December, pick back up in January,
Sweeps week.
sweeps, and then shut down in the summer. That actually is the way things work on the way people view on the internet. They did that for a reason with broadcast, because that's the way, when the people were watching, and it turns out on the internet that's when people are watching too. So like the worst time to launch a web series on Sika TV is either August or December. You will waste your launch if you do that. The best time to launch is really right now, September, October time frame. March and April are pretty good as well. June and July aren't so bad as in the old days they wouldn't do June and July, but you can get away with it now. But August, no.
Really?
Wow.
Yeah.
I wonder if that coincides with like maybe school years too, because that's kind of a major.
Well, yeah, I think you got a lot. I mean, I think one of the reasons that August is so bad is, of course, when you bring in an international audience, you've got the fact that a lot of nations across the world basically go away in August, so they're not watching anything. But yeah, it's I think it is school year related and holiday related. So if people are wanting to do other things, then they're not going to be sitting watching their favorite web series or television show.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know why that is? Do you have, as a philosophy major, do you have a theory on this phenomenon?
No, I don't actually. Okay. That's just a follow the data type thing.
Yeah.
That's what and that's probably that's one that I actually was most surprised about, because I really expected online viewing. I've always hated, as a fan of television, I've always hated the summer hiatus. And as somebody working in Hollywood, I really hated the summer hiatus, because that means there was no jobs. But yeah. So I always, was sort of under the assumption when I got into this that things would be different in the internet world, and in that one respect, it isn't at all.
So what do you hope for and see for the future of like this festival?
So for Minnesota Webfest, my goal for the first 3 years was to establish it among the top tier festivals in the world for web series. Obviously, I mean, we're not going to be we're not going to be Sundance or anything like that. But as far as focused on this format, and I think we've achieved that. This year, we had 60, 70 people from all over the world attend the festival, which is more people than attended in total the first year of the festival. And we had people coming in from Argentina, Brazil, of course, Canada, France, Germany, Italy, so Spain. So we've really done well in that, and my next objective is to start, so we've established it as a good place for creators to come and network with other like-minded people, a good place for the local community, both film and TV, to come and mix with people from outside, as well as for viewers to get exposure to this content. My next goal is to bring in the industry into this. So for next year, I really want to be putting filmmakers in contact with buyers who are either funding co-production or being like a Sika TV, or even hopefully one of the big guys. That's my main focus for what's next.
That's phenomenal.
Yeah, so you hear that, filmmakers? Maybe start making your pilot ideas now.
Yep.
And
Web
get it
series is
ready
the way to go
for next year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we open submissions on November 4th. So.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Perfect.
coming up.
You got to get him ready or get him quick.
Yeah.
Well, that's the early stuff. You have plenty of time. If you don't have your stuff ready, we don't. I don't think we finalize till late spring. So.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I was gonna ask.
I've been asking all the questions. You go ahead.
No, you're. I was gonna go with. So, what is your why? Why do you do what you do?
I honestly don't know. No, it's
such a real answer. I love it.
No, well, the funny thing is why I'm so quick with it is because it's actually a question I've been wondering, you look at Utopia Planitia, for example. It's never going to make any money. Netflix isn't going out there buying, shows with 5 minutes, 5-minute episodes or 30 minutes of content for, millions of dollars. They may buy concepts and then have you throw away what you've done or something like that, which, it'd be nice if somebody noticed me as a writer and decided to pick up a concept or if it led to something else. But I mean, I don't think that's realistic.
They'll option it and then never make it. Yeah.
And then that's if I win the lottery type thing too. I mean, the reality is the most likely scenario is some people are entertained, maybe a few hundred or a few thousand people are entertained off it. And it's just, throughout everything I've ever done, it's just been, I've got a creative drive to do something creative and express myself, and this is just one of the ways in which I do it. And whether it ends up being an audience of 0 or an audience of millions, it's going to be something I'm going to have to do, and I don't know why.
Yeah.
Well, maybe to phrase the question just a little bit differently real quick, like what do you want maybe people to remember you most for, or how,
That's a totally different thing. I think probably I as somebody they learned something from. Whether it be people who work for me saw me as somebody who helped make their career better, or whether it's somebody who's read my books and is now able to do things I couldn't do before, or my kids be good human beings, whatever, it's that, I want to be a good mentor.
Nice.
Yeah.
I like that. We need more of that.
Absolutely. I think that's really genuinely necessary. So that's phenomenal. So how can people get a hold of you, reach you, take a look at your content, like what you've created before, like if they wanted to work with you, things like that? So
the domain I've had since 1996 is really easy to remember. It's imaginary.com. So I'm george.reese at imaginary.com. The website's imaginary.com. That's the name of my production company, Imaginary Productions. Even when I was doing technology, I was still building my own edit bays and stuff like that. So I've been, doing stuff even while just totally in tech, but that's why I have the domain. But that's the way to reach me personally. Of course, Sika.tv is how you get to Sika TV, and that's got apps for every device or set-top thing you can think of. And then Minnesota Webfest is mnwebfest.org.
Nice. That's phenomenal.
Yeah. Well, George, thank you for coming on. I've learned a lot.
Well, thank you.
Thanks
for having me.
Yeah, this was a lot of fun. Very interesting.
Yeah.
Good. Kind of all over the place.
Yeah.
I tend to...
Such is life. So.
Yeah, that's what makes it so fun, though.
Good.
Yeah. Well, thanks for joining in today. And to all our listeners, we will catch you next time.
All right. See ya.